Yeah. Well, today we are going to present Carlos Castillo Armas with my classmate Alejandro Sierra. Well, Carlos Armas was a Guatemalan military man born in 1914 in Guatemala City. Coming from a rural family, Armas received his training at the school Polytechnic de Guatemala, and he was a military academic, of which he would later become director. Um, well, in 1950, he ran in the presidential elections, which he lost to Jacobo Arbenz. Castillo Armas then departed from the legal channels and began to conspire against the regime. But the failure of his attempt forced his flight to Havana and then to Honduras. He then obtained the support of the United States and the country hostile to the Arabs government because of its agrarian reform, which affected the United Fruit Company. Later in 1950, again, 76% of the inhabitants owned less than the 10% of the land, while the 22% controlled by the 70%. President Arbenz said himself the difficult goal of bringing about a social and economic revolution in rural Guatemala. Well, on June 27, in 1954, Castillo Armas began the invasion of Guatemala from Honduras at the head of a small number of men, but with the help of US aircraft, Jacobo Arbenz was forced to resign and Castillo Armas seized the power during his mandate. Later, he revoked the progressive 1945 constitution, repealed the agrarian reform undertaken by his predecessor, and returned the land expropriated from the United Fruit Company. He also dissolved the Congress, banned parties and unions and hardly repressed all opposition, assuming the dictatorial powers. Well, in his government, the first action of the counter-revolutionary government of Castillo Armas were it made the Guatemalan Labor Party illegal. Second, provided the associations, unions, and political parties. Third, suspended programs unfavorable to indigenous, well, indigenous people and the working class, imposed severe censorship. Four, dissolved the Congress. And five, he began a harsh persecution against leftist intellectuals.
Okay, now talking about the major achievements of Carlos Castillo Armas. So the main achievement of Castillo Armas is remembered is having led the rebellion that overthrew President Jacobo Arbenz, alleging that the Arbenz government had communist leggings and had expropriated land from the United Fruit Company and other U.S. landowners. So first of all, it was like a kind of leader. So and after all, Guatemala received some influences by USA. So basically, another achievement was the support from the United States. His government had the backing of the United States, which was concerned about the communist influence in Latin America during the Cold War. So the overthrow of Arbenz was perceived as a victory in the fight against communists in the region. And for last, we have the restoration of the democracy in limited terms. So now talking about the major pitfalls of Carlos Castillo Armas that faced internal resistance and political opposition. It was difficult to him go through this because basically he had controversial things in the government, obviously about the dictatorship and something else. But part of the Guatemalan population was opposed his authoritarian government and obviously the repressive measures that he implemented. And for last, he had economic and social challenges. Guatemala was facing economic and social challenges at the time. So basically, the Jacobo Arbenz land had raised expectations around land reform and improved living conditions for peasants. So he was like the bottle of cold water. So it was difficult to him go through this. Next, please. So now talking about the end of the dictatorship, dictatorship of Carlos Castillo Armas in Guatemala came to an end with his assassination on July 26 on 1957. Castillo Armas was assassinated in the National Palace of Culture in Guatemala City by a group of military officers. His death led to a series of political events and power struggles in Guatemala. So, obviously, following his assassination, military took control of the country for a brief period until it was replaced by a series of military civilian governments. Next, please. So, continuing, we have the influence of foreign governments. We have that we talked before that we have influence of United States. Okay, and we talked that the U.S. government liked a lot that Carlos Castillo Armas was like anti-communism, so that things influenced the United States to help and go through this. And during the dictatorship, obviously the main influence was from the United States for that reason. And once Carlos Castillo Armas assumed the power, he received financial, military, and political support from the United States to remain in office. These include obviously military advice, arms supplies, and training for Guatemalan forces. And that would be all. So thank you so much for everyone to pay attention to our presentation. This was the presentation about Carlos Castillo Armas. Thank you so much.